Hello everybody, welcome back to our series where we're making every single BJCP Cider style. And in this video we're going to be making apple wine. Apple wine is one of the most straightforward cider styles you could make. It's basically just a New World cider with added sugar to bump up the ABV. Quite literally, that is almost word for word what it says inside the BJCP. So let's go ahead and give a look at the description. So, an apple wine. This term for this category is traditional but probably misleading. It is simply a cider with substantial added sugar to achieve higher alcohol than a standard cider. As such, it comes closer to a white wine than any other style. No fruit must be added to this cider, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so overall impression. Typically like a dry white wine, balanced with low astringency and bitterness. So something that is balanced more towards the sweet end and not towards the tannin or sharp end is usually what we're going for juice-wise. Appearance, clear to brilliant, pale to medium gold, and cloudiness or haziness are inappropriate. So we are going to be using a juice that is going to provide that pale to medium gold look. Aroma, comparable to New World cider. And the character must be distinctive. The cider character must be distinctive. Very dry to sweet, although often dry. I don't know if we're going to be back sweetening this one or not. And then finally, mouthfeel, lighter than other ciders because it has higher alcohol. It can be carbonated. You just choose the carbonation range. So for this video, I want to do something a little bit different. I wanted to go ahead and make the same exact recipe 3 times and just change the yeast out. So we're going to have a head-to-head comparison of 3 different yeasts out of this. And whichever one I like the best will be the apple wine that I submit to a competition next year.
The 3 yeasts we're going to be using for this test are going to be Redstar Premier Blanc, Redstar Premier Cote de Blanc, and Safcider AC-4.
The recipe is very simple. We're going to be adding 1 pound of sugar and 2 grams of malic acid, 2 grams of fermento, and a single gram of white wine tannin into our fermenter. Mix it up, oxygenate it, then pitch our yeast, and let it go. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to go ahead and measure a pound of white sugar. This is specifically granulated cane sugar, and we're going to go ahead and put it into each one at the bottom of each one of these fermenters. And next we're adding our nutrient and acid addition. Nutrient, acid, and tannin addition to each one of these. And now finally we're adding our juice. I'm going to go ahead and add this in to here. It's easier with the spigot to do gravity readings. And if you have these little big mouth bubblers, you may know this already, but you really need to torque the crap out of these before you start shaking them, or you're going to get liquid all over the place. So, really, really torqued. Adding in our lid, and then give it a nice little test swirl to see how that works. All right, that looks good, and now I go ahead and shake. Shaking's going to oxygenate this, and it's also going to mix that sugar around, so shake vigorously. All right, still got some dissolved sugar in there, or undissolved sugar in there, so continuing to shake. That looks pretty good. Gonna take a gravity reading now. I don't say this often in my videos, but make sure you clean and sanitize all your equipment before you use it. Clean after every use, sanitize before every use. Oh. If you don't have to take the lid off, it creates a vacuum and you can't actually get flow. Looks like we're sitting at 1.084 right now. dump this back into here. So 0.084 times 131.2 will lead us to a final alcohol by volume percentage of 11.02% or just 11%, because not really going to get very much more accurate in that math. So that's pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and set this guy aside while we do the same thing to the other two. Yeast pitching time. All right, and for most yeast, you can just go ahead and just sprinkle it right on top. Some of them require rehydration, but it'll say on the manufacturer's package if you would need to do that. All right, pitching the last two packets. And bam, last two packets pitched. Gonna give these guys a good swirl around. For these packets, they're the amount of yeast you get inside there is with the 10 grams of it of at least of the Safcider stuff is good for 1 hectoliter. One. I think that's the math, the term. No, hexaliter or something like that. HL, hexaliter. Anyway, it's equal to like an astronomical amount of cider you can make with it. So you can be conservative with your yeast package, but I wouldn't be too concerned about under pitching for 1 gallon batches. For 5 gallon batches, you probably just use the whole entire packet, but for 1 gallon batches, don't worry about under pitching. It's not really. As long as you use at least half the packet, you'll probably be fine. And now these 3 are ready to go off for a little bit of time to ferment. Whenever I'm doing smaller, like higher ABV stuff, I like to use smaller batches because it doesn't really make much sense to make a really high batch of high alcoholic stuff. What am I going to do? Keg it? I guess I could keg wine, but it's just, I don't know, maybe something in the future. But I'm just going to bottle them still, and that should be good. These are going to all be clearing up wonderfully after that. What we're going to monitor for is, at the end of this, what I'm going to do the taste test on is to do the side-by-side of appearance, side-by-side of sweetness or perceived sweetness, flavor, and just overall cider character. And we'll get a nice comparison of that. So I'm going to mark these, and then we'll be off for a little bit.
After about a month, all 3 apple wines were racked into secondary vessels, and then a month after that, all 3 wines were bottled, and this tasting video occurs about a month after they were placed into bottles, for a total of 3 months of time from the start of fermentation to tasting.
Hello everybody, welcome back to the conclusion of our yeast comparison between 3 apple wine yeasts. The first one is going to be Redstar Premier Blanc. The second one we're comparing today is Redstar Premier Cote de Blanc, and then Safcider AC-4. 3 of these yeasts were fermented with the exact same recipe, the exact same physical conditions, and they finished at kind of different timelines depending on how active the yeast were. So I'm going to go ahead here, and I'm going to pour these into 3 separate cups. I have labeled the bottom of the cups based off of the number here that the cup's position is. So the first one is Premier Blanc. That is number 1. Cote de Blanc is here as number 2. And AC-4 is here as number 3. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pour these into the glasses, and then I'm going to have my wife Justine go ahead and randomize these for me. I'll be outside the room, and then I'm going to come in here and do a blind taste test and see which one I prefer. Make sure I have equal pour on these. Fill up a little bit more. I'm trying to make sure there's no physical difference between the 2 of these that I could detect. So I'm going to go ahead and move these off to the side. And now I'm going to go ahead and have these shuffled up. Part of the last thing is I'm going to try and guess which yeast is which on each one of these ones. So I'm going to go ahead and let Justine shuffle these up. Okay, so Justine has shuffled these all up. I'm just going to go from left to right and just describe what I get appearance and smell, and then I'll just go and taste them after I do that. So the first one is a little bit slightly hazy, but still pretty clear throughout. Aroma, I'm kind of getting really like sweet apple and kind of notes, a little bit of toffee notes. A little bit of alcohol on the back end too. I can definitely smell the alcohol. These are, I think they're about 12% ABV. Second one, not getting hardly any aroma. If I search for it, I get a little bit of apple aroma, but it's definitely less strong of an apple aroma than the first one. Yeah, it's not really that noticeable in that one. Clarity, this one is hazy and did not clear all the way. And the third one, this one is crystal clear. I'm getting that kind of rich apple note from the first one and that kind of toffee smell as well, but it's less pronounced than the first one. Yeah, it still smells pretty good. Okay, all right, I'm going to go from left to right and give it a taste. The first one's kind of it's dry. It's the kind of sweet apple taste isn't coming through, but it really is on the smell. The primary, I would describe this as a little bit of the kind of flabby, which is to say that this is missing a little bit of that acid content to make it kind of more bright and apple winey. Still overall pretty good flavor. I mean, there is some perceptible alcohol in this, but it's not overwhelming. It's pretty well balanced. It's a good balance right there. Good aroma, like top 10, like I should say, like it would give this like a 9 out of 10 aroma, maybe 10 out of 10 aroma. And then the kind of apple, there is not a slight apple flavor, but it's more towards the end rather than at the beginning. The beginning is kind of watery and flabby. So let's go to the second one. Yeah, once again, no aroma. Okay. That one's not good. Description. It's kind of jet fuel-y. This just tastes like alcohol, like just ethanol. Getting very little. I mean, it's dry. It's dry and has a little bit of tartness to it, but man, it burns. That is unpleasant to drink. All right. I do not like that one. And then the third one. Yeah, it still has that kind of slight appley nose. That one has less of a, like this one has more of a, it's more balanced towards the tannic side of things. The tannin's really up front in this one. Your primary first taste you get is tannin, like apple tannin. Over here on the left side, you kind of get the watery note to begin with, but then it kind of ends with that tannic note and kind of acidy note afterwards. But let me do a palate cleanse over here. Give these two a reverse order try. Yeah, this one definitely opens up with more tannin and acid and has that kind of alcohol-y back note. The aroma is good, but it's not great. It could definitely be improved. But I think the flavor of this one is a bit better than the flavor of this one. So if I had to say what each one of these are, I would say that the one on the left is the Premier Cote de Blanc. The one in the middle is the Premier Blanc. And then the one on the right is the AC-4. I think that's how I would do that. Pretty sure that's probably right. Let's see. Yeah, this one's Cote de Blanc. This one is Premier Blanc. And this one is AC-4. Yep. So that is correct. What ranking I would give these based off of taste, aroma, and overall appearance, it's really tough between these two, the AC-4 and the Cote de Blanc. I would say if I had to pick one, the aroma on the Cote de Blanc is just outstanding. It really just smells quite pleasant to smell. But then again, that kind of flabby start, same identical recipe, but it has a pretty flabby start, kind of makes me not want to prefer this. But the AC-4 has that kind of toffee note aroma, but less so. But this one starts off right away being that kind of dry, tannic expectation you expect from like apple wine, and it actually has that acid to back it up too. So I would think that I would probably rate the AC-4 as my choice here, and then the Cote de Blanc as my second choice. They're very close. I would not make anything with Premier Blanc. This is just straight. It's like jet fuel. It's not even not worth wasting the money on. So recommendations are AC-4 or Cote de Blanc for cider yeasts, specifically for apple wine making. I can do one with cider itself, but I want to kind of give the yeast a little bit of higher ABV test here to see where they ended up. All three of them ended up as completely dry. So no residual sugar in them at all. But there are definitely quite dramatic differences between all of the yeast from both clarity, from a perspective of clarity, taste, and aroma. Huge differences. So would recommend you kind of give these a go on your own, see what your own results are. But I know I'll be using these two yeasts here in the future. From a cost perspective, I believe, I'll put prices on the video here, but I believe that the AC-4 is $4.99 a satchel, which does 5 gallons, and the Premier Cote de Blanc is $1.99 a satchel, which does 5 gallons as well. So from a cost perspective, better bang for your buck on the Cote de Blanc. So if that's a variable in your analysis here, then I would go with that as well. So Premier Blanc costs the same roughly as Cote de Blanc. Vastly different quality here. The exact same recipe. So I can't state this enough that don't use this if you have if you want to have something good, don't use that. All right. I think I'm going to leave that as my conclusion for the video. Thanks so much for watching this comparison, and I'll see you in the next video. Happy cider.